I slammed on the brakes harder than I meant to, the cake box tumbling to the floor mat with a pathetic thud, frosting smearing the leather like fresh blood from a fresh wound. My heart jackhammered against my ribs, not from the near miss with the guardrail, but from the venom in her words, the kind of Bible-thumping judgment that had simmered under our roof for years, now boiling over because Dad's cancer had metastasized for the third time. Mark's birthday was tomorrow, and I'd promised him the world in that quiet motel room last week, whispering against his neck that I'd make it right, that love like ours could weather any storm. But as the wipers slapped back and forth, fighting the downpour, I wondered if I was driving toward forgiveness or straight into the inferno I'd been running from since I was 16. That promise to Mark felt like the only solid thing left in my life. We'd met 2 years ago at a dive bar in Capitol Hill, the kind of place where the air smelled like stale beer and possibility, rain pattering on the tin roof like it was applauding our first awkward hello. He was nursing a whiskey neat, his dark hair tousled from the wind off Lake Union, and those hazel eyes, God, they had this way of seeing right through you, like he knew the weight you carried before you even opened your mouth. I was fresh off a bad breakup with a guy who'd ghosted me after I mentioned wanting something real, something that didn't end at dawn. Mark slid onto the stool next to me, clinked his glass against mine without a word, and said, "Rough night? We're just practicing for the apocalypse." We laughed, and it snowballed from there, late-night drives along the Puget Sound, sharing takeout pho on his cramped apartment balcony, him teaching me how to fix the leaky faucet in my studio, while quoting bad 80s movies to keep me from cursing. He was a graphic designer, freelancing for indie bands, with tattoos snaking up his forearms like stories he hadn't told yet. I was an elementary school teacher in a suburb that pretended queerness didn't exist, grading spelling tests by day and hiding my Grindr notifications by night. But with Mark, the hiding stopped. He made me believe in us, in a future where we could build something sturdy, maybe even a house with a yard for a dog named after Hemingway. Yet here I was, barreling east on I-90, the Cascades giving way to endless pine forests that looked like they were closing in, all because Dad's latest scan showed tumors blooming like weeds in his lungs. Mom had called 2 days ago, her voice brittle as autumn leaves. "Come home, Tony. He's asking for you." No mention of Mark, of course. In their world, I was still the golden boy who'd aced his teaching credential at UW, the one who'd mowed the lawn every summer without complaint, the one who hadn't come out until I was 24, after a Christmas dinner where Uncle Ray slurred something about real men, and I snapped, slamming my fist on the table so hard the turkey platter jumped. That was the last holiday I'd spent there. Since then, it was radio silence, punctuated by guilt-laced birthday cards and Mom's occasional texts about church potlucks. Mark had been my anchor through it all. Last summer, when I'd confessed over coffee at that hole-in-the-wall diner on Pike Street how my family's rejection gnawed at me like termites in old wood, he'd taken my hand across the sticky Formica table and said, "Eli, wait. No, Anthony. You're not their mistake. You're mine, and I wouldn't trade you for a lifetime of their approval." We'd kissed right there, uncaring of the waitress's side-eye, and later that night, tangled in his sheets, he'd traced the scar on my shoulder from a childhood fall off the barn roof, murmuring that scars were just proof you'd survived. It was moments like that, raw, unfiltered, that made me think we could outrun the past. But survival has a price. As the odometer ticked past the 9-hour mark, somewhere in Spokane, the storm eased to a drizzle, and my phone lit up again. This time, it was a text from my sister, Lena. "Dad's stable for now. Mom's a wreck. Where are you? And why the hell are you bringing that cake?" She saw the Amazon order. My stomach dropped. I'd ordered it on a whim, thinking maybe a peace offering. Mark's birthday fused with Dad's fading strength, a stupid symbol of sweetness in the bitterness. But of course, Mom monitored the family credit card like it was the FBI watch list. I pictured her in the kitchen of the old farmhouse, the one with the creaky porch swing where Dad taught me to whittle, her face crumpling as she read the receipt. Birthday cake delivery, for M. Harlow. Mark's last name, the one she'd pieced together from a stray Facebook, like I'd forgotten to unlike. Panic clawed up my throat. I pulled over at a rest stop, the neon sign flickering eagle's nest like a bad omen, and called him. It rang 4 times before his voice, sleepy and warm, filled the Jeep. "Babe? It's like 3 a.m. You okay?" I love you. I blurted, the words tumbling out before I could dress them up. More than the rain, more than the road, more than whatever shit show I'm driving into. Happy early birthday. He chuckled, that low rumble that always settled my nerves. You're such a sap. What's got you all poetic? The cake survived the apocalypse. Barely. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel, the smell of damp pine seeping through the vents. Mom knows. About us. She called me the gay sin, Mark. Like I'm some Old Testament curse. Silence stretched, thick as the fog rolling in from the Spokane River. Then, Anthony, turn around. Come home to me. Your family's poison. You don't owe them your soul. But I did. Or at least, that's what the guilt whispered. The same guilt that had me packing up at dawn, kissing his forehead while he slept, leaving a note. Be back by noon tomorrow. This fixes everything. Lies, all of it. Because nothing fixed the fracture that started when I was a kid, watching Dad coach Little League with that easy grin, Mom baking pies for the county fair, and me realizing in the locker room showers that the way I looked at Tommy Ramirez wasn't like the other boys. I'd buried it deep, dated girls in high school, sweet, confused Emily who deserved better, until college cracked me open. Mark deserved better too. As I merged back onto the highway, the cake salvaged but squished, I replayed our first real fight. It was 6 months in, after I'd bailed on a pride parade to drive home for Lena's wedding rehearsal. You're choosing them again, he'd accused, his eyes flashing hurt in the dim light of his living room. Every time it gets hard, you run back to the people who make you feel like garbage. I'd yelled back that family was blood, that love wasn't a light switch you flipped for convenience. We didn't speak for 3 days, but he showed up at my classroom with sunflowers and an apology note. You're right. Blood matters. But so does heart. We made up on the ferry to Bainbridge, watching seals bob in the wake, his head on my shoulder as the sun dipped low. That memory fueled me through the last stretch, the Idaho border a blur of sagebrush and regret. By dawn, the rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean except for the mud splattered on my tires. The farmhouse loomed like a sentinel, white clapboard peeling at the edges, the windmill creaking lazily in the breeze. I parked in the gravel drive, cake box clutched like a shield, and stepped out into the chill. The door swung open before I could knock, Lena there in her flannel robe, eyes red-rimmed but fierce. Tony, she whispered, pulling me into a hug that smelled like coffee and hospital antiseptic. You look like hell. Feel like it too. I held up the cake. For Dad. And Mark senses love. Her face tightened, just a flicker, but I caught it. Mom's inside. Doc says he's got maybe weeks. Don't poke the bear, okay? I nodded, throat too thick for words, and followed her through the mudroom stacked with canning jars and faded quilts. The living room was a shrine to the life we'd lost. Dad's recliner by the window, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, photos of us kids grinning gap-toothed at state fairs. He was in the hospital bed they'd rented, tubes snaking from his arms, his once broad chest sunken under the blanket. Mom hovered like a ghost, her graying hair pulled back severe, lips pressed thin. Anthony. Her voice was ice. You came. For Dad. I set the cake on the side table, careful not to jostle the wilting lilies from church. His eyes fluttered open, cloudy blue like the sky after rain, and for a second, it was just us, fishing at the Snake River, him teaching me to bait a hook without flinching. Son. His whisper rasped, hand trembling as he reached for mine. Missed you. Tears stung, hot and unbidden. Missed you more, Dad. Brought your favorite. Chocolate fudge. A ghost of a smile. Always the thoughtful one. Mom's scoff sliced the air. Thoughtful. Driving all night with that. Abomination? I saw the order, Tony. That boy's poison, turning you into something unnatural. The church prays for you, but God's not forgiving if you don't repent. Lena shot her a look. Mom, not now. But the dam broke. Years of swallowed words surged up. Repent? For loving someone. Mark's the best thing that's happened to me. He sees me. Mom, not the version you want to pray away. My voice cracked, echoing off the wood-paneled walls. Dad's grip tightened, a silent plea, but I couldn't stop. You call me the gay sin? Like I'm Judas? I've been bleeding for this family my whole life. Skipping graduations, lying to friends, hating myself in the mirror because of your sermons and side eyes. And for what? So you can die feeling righteous? Dad wheezed. Enough. His eyes locked on mine, pleading. Family. Sticks. But it didn't. Not when the whispers started in town after Lena's groom joked about bachelor uncles. Not when Mom burned my old journals in the fire pit, pages curling like my secrets. I pulled away, chest heaving, and stormed out to the porch, the swing chains rattling in the wind. Lena followed, handing me a mug of black coffee. She's scared, Tony. Dad's fading, and you're the loose thread she can pull. Scared? She's hateful. I sipped, bitter as bile. Mark called last night. He gets it. The hiding, the ache. Why can't she? Because she's us, before we grew. Lena sat beside me, the swing dipping. Remember when I dated that Muslim guy in college? Dad locked the door. We survive it. But survival wasn't living. As the sun climbed, gilding the wheat fields gold, I texted Mark. Here. Storm's just starting. Love you. His reply buzzed instant. Write it out. I'm your harbor. Harbor. The word lodged in my throat, a lifeline in the undertow. The day blurred into vigil, spooning broth into Dad's mouth, swapping stories of harvests past, while Mom glowered from the kitchen, muttering psalms under her breath. By evening, as shadows stretched long, he rallied enough to ask about Seattle. The rain. Still drown everything. Pretty much. I smiled, squeezing his hand. But the views? Killer. Mark and I hiked Rattlesnake Ledge last month, saw the Olympics from the top, like the world's holding its breath. His brow furrowed. Mark. The friend. My pulse thrummed. This was it, the cliff edge. More than that, Dad. He's my partner. The one who makes the gray days bearable. Silence, heavy as the quilt over his legs. Then, soft. Tell me about him. Relief flooded, tentative. I did. How Mark burned toast but made killer pancakes. How he'd sketched our first date on a napkin, framing it crooked above his desk. Dad listened, eyes distant, and for a heartbeat, I glimpsed the man who'd bandaged my knees and believed in second chances. But nightfall brought the reckoning. Mom cornered me in the hallway, Bible clutched like a weapon. I know what you are, Anthony. That cake? Mockery. Your father's soul hangs by a thread because of your choices, defiling God's order. Her whisper was a hiss, eyes wild. Leave, before you drag us all to hell. I laughed, broken. Hell? I've been living it, Mom. Every lie I told to keep your peace. Mark's birthday is tomorrow, and I'm here, chasing ghosts. But you? You're the one chaining us to fear. She slapped me. The crack echoed, her palms stinging my cheek, regret flashing in her eyes too late. I touched the red bloom, tasting salt, and whispered, that's the sin, not love. Lena burst from the room, pulling me away. Go. I'll handle her. Outside, stars pricked the velvet sky, the cake forgotten on the counter. I climbed into the Jeep, engine roaring to life, and peeled out, gravel spitting like accusations. 12 hours back, rain starting again, but this time, it felt like baptism. Mark was waiting on the balcony when I pulled up at dusk the next day, cake box salvaged in my lap, frosting a war zone but intact. He didn't ask questions, just wrapped me in his arms, the city lights twinkling below like fallen stars. Happy birthday to me, he murmured, kissing my temple. We ate it cross-legged on the floor, candles flickering, laughter bubbling through the cracks in my armor. To us, I toasted, fork raised. The sinners who make it beautiful. His eyes shone. To driving through storms. And coming home. But home wasn't a place. It was him. Us. The quiet vow we'd forged in the fire. Days later, Lena called. Dad had passed peacefully, whispering my name, asking for that hike story one more time. Mom was silent, but the funeral invite came, tentative olive branch. I went, Mark's hand in mine under the pew, facing the stairs with chin up. No repentance, just presence. And in the cemetery, under Idaho skies vast as forgiveness, I scattered dirt on the grave and felt the weight lift, not gone, but shared. Love isn't a straight road. It's the detour through the rain, cake crumbling but sweet. Mark and I, we're still driving, windows down, chasing sunbreaks. And that's the real miracle. No sin, just grace, hard-won and ours. I woke to the scent of rain-soaked earth and regret. Mark's arm slung heavy across my waist, his breath steady against my neck like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. It was the morning after the funeral, Dad's, not the metaphorical one I'd buried alongside him, and the weight of it all pressed down, heavier than the Idaho mud caking my boots by the door. We'd flown back from Boise the night before, Mark white-knuckling the armrest through turbulence, whispering, "We're okay," more to himself than me. And now, in the gray light filtering through the blinds of our Seattle apartment, I stared at the ceiling cracks mapping out my fractures, wondering if coming out to Dad in those final hours had been mercy or cruelty. He died 3 days after I left the farmhouse that second time, Lena's call coming at 4 a.m. like a gut punch. "He's gone, Tony. Peaceful. Said to tell you. Be happy. Be happy." As if it were a switch, not a war. The service was a blur of potluck casseroles and condolences laced with pity. Uncle Ray gripping my shoulder too hard, murmuring about finding Jesus, while cousins I'd grown up chasing fireflies with averted their eyes from Mark, who stood tall beside me in his wool coat, hand firm in mine. Mom hadn't spoken to me directly, her gaze sliding off like oil on water, but she nodded when I approached the casket, her lips moving in silent prayer. Forgiveness? Hardly. Truce, maybe. Enough to let me grieve without the venom. Mark shifted, mumbling something incoherent, and I traced the line of his jaw, the stubble rough under my fingertips. This man, my man, had dropped everything when I called from the road, booking the flight, packing my go-bag with clean socks and that photo of us from the beach, the one where we're laughing with waves crashing behind. "Families are like onions," he'd said on the plane, squeezing my knee. "Layers of crap, but get through it, and there's something real underneath." Optimist. That's what drew me to him, that unshakable belief that people could change, even when evidence screamed otherwise. But doubt not. As I slipped from bed, padding to the kitchen in boxers and his old Husky's tea, I brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint, the machine gurgling like my thoughts. The apartment was our sanctuary, exposed brick walls lined with his sketches, my dog-eared Vonnegut paperbacks stacked haphazardly, a rainbow flag thumbtacked above the fridge like a defiant middle finger to the world. Yet lately, it felt small, the walls closing in with unspoken what-ifs. What if Mom's words were right? What if loving Mark meant losing the last threads of my past? What if Dad's final whisper was code for "fix yourself"? The mug warmed my palms as I leaned against the counter, scrolling through condolences on my phone. Lena's text, "Mom asked about you today. Said the cake was good. A crumb of olive branch, or crumbs of pity." Then, buried in the notifications, an email from the school principal. "Anthony, we need to discuss your performance review. Parental complaints about lifestyle influences on students." My blood ran cold. In the lily-white suburb of Bellevue, where soccer moms clutched pearls at the sight of anything non-traditional, I'd been the cool teacher with the guitar for Music Fridays, the one who let kids draw their feelings instead of spelling lists. But whispers traveled, a dad spotting me at a queer bookstore in Seattle, piecing it together. Mark had warned me. Teaching's a minefield for us. One wrong step. Footsteps shuffled behind me. "Penny for your thoughts, or bourbon?" Mark's voice, husky from sleep, wrapped around me as he pressed against my back, chin on my shoulder. I leaned into him, the solid warmth chasing the chill. "Just the email." I turned the screen. His eyes narrowed, scanning. "Assholes. You want me to design a logo for their protest?" "Bellevue bigots, hiding behind PDA banners." He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. That was Mark, deflecting with humor, shielding me from the barbs. He took plenty of his own. His freelance gigs dried up last month when a client reconsidered after seeing his Instagram Pride posts. "Artistic differences," the email said. "Bullshit." I set the phone down, pulling him closer. "We should get out of here. Weekend trip. Olympic Peninsula, cabins, no signal, just us and bad horror movies on a crappy TV." Tempting. His lips brushed my ear. "But you're dodging. Talk to me, Anthony. The funeral gutted you." It had. Standing graveside, wind whipping the canvas awning, I'd felt the earth shift, not just Dad's absence, but the illusion of family as unbreakable. Mom's eulogy painted him as the pillar of faith, a man who'd fought the good fight, omitting the quiet beers we'd shared on the porch, talking dreams instead of doctrine. Mark had squeezed my hand then, grounding me, but later, in the motel, I'd shattered, sobbing into his shirt until dawn, him holding me like I was porcelain, not poison. I told him everything. I confessed now, voice thick. About us. And he didn't recoil. But Mom. She looked at you like you were the devil's errand boy. Family's gonna family. He shrugged, but his shoulders tensed. Mine did the same. Dad shipping me off to conversion camp at 17, like I was a glitch to debug. Mom baked cookies for the counselors. I get it. His story always hit like a freight train. Mark from rural Ohio, football star turned outcast, hitchhiking west with a backpack and a sketchpad. We'd bonded over that. Me from conservative Christian farm stock. Him from the buckle where gay was shorthand for going to hell. But where I'd clawed for scraps of approval, he'd burned bridges spectacularly, middle finger raised. No half measures, he'd say. Love or bust. Breakfast was pancakes. His specialty, lopsided but golden, eaten at the wobbly table we'd scavenged from a yard sale. We talked logistics. Me job hunting in Seattle proper, where the schools flew pride flags. Him pitching to queer-owned labels. Hope flickered, fragile as the steam rising from our plates. But as he cleared dishes, humming some indie track, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Anthony Harlow. A woman's voice, clipped and professional. This is Detective Ruiz, Bellevue PD. We need to speak about an incident at your residence. My fork clattered. Incident? What? Your ex, Daniel Reese. He filed a report. Claims you assaulted him last week. Says it's connected to personal matters. Daniel. The ghost from 2 years back. The one who'd vanished after I pushed for commitment. Assault? I'd bumped into him at the grocery. Awkward hellos turning sour when he spotted my pride pin. Still playing house with that artist freak. He'd sneered. I'd walked away, fists clenched but untouched. Lie. All of it. Mark's face paled as I relayed, his hand finding mine across the table. He's outing you. Using the cops to smear. The call ended with an interview scheduled for Monday. Panic clawed, tenure on the line, reputation shredded. Daniel, with his tech bro smirk and grudge the size of the sound, had smelled blood. My queerness as leverage, twisted into violence. Why now? I muttered, pacing the living room, Mark trailing like a shadow. Payback. He blocked my path, hands on my shoulders. He knows about your family drama, saw the posts. This is him kicking when you're down. Down. Yeah. The drive, the death, the slap. Layers peeling, exposing raw nerves. I collapsed onto the couch, head in hands. I can't lose the job, Mark. Those kids. They need someone who gets it, who shows them it's okay to be different. You won't. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. We'll fight. Lawyer up, go public if we have to. But Anthony, promise me. No running back to Idaho for absolution. This is our fight. Our fight. The words anchored, pulling me from the abyss. We spent the day prepping, calling a queer legal aid hotline. Mark sketching a timeline of Daniel's bullshit on butcher paper, turning rage into art. Evening found us on the balcony, city hum below, takeout ties steaming between us. Remember our first rainstorm? He asked, twirling noodles. You showed up soaked, declaring eternal devotion with that wilted daisy from the park. I laughed, genuine. Epic fail. But you kept it in a vase till it mummified. Proof of principle. His foot nudged mine. We're mummified daisies, babe. Ugly, but enduring. Night deepened, and in bed, bodies entwined but minds racing, I confessed the deepest cut. What if I am the sin? What if loving you costs everything? He stilled, then cupped my face, eyes fierce in the moonlight. Then it's a sin worth every penny. You're not poison, Anthony. You're the antidote. Monday dawned crisp, the precinct a sterile box of fluorescent buzz and coffee dregs. Detective Ruiz was kind-eyed, Latino with a no-nonsense bun, flipping through Daniel's statement. Embellished with bruises from who knows where, claims of harassment born of rejection. Mark waited outside, thumbing through a dog-eared paperback, his presence a talisman. I know this smells off, Ruiz said, leaning forward. Reese's story has holes. Timestamps don't match, no witnesses. But protocol. We investigate. By noon it unraveled. Daniel's evidence, text twisted out of context, traced to a burner app, his own history of volatility popping up in records. Stalking complaint from a previous partner, she revealed. This one's dismissed. But word of advice? Get a restraining order. Relief crashed, euphoric. I texted Mark, Clear. His reply, celebration pad thai? But victory soured on route home. A voicemail from Mom, voice quavering. Tony, the lawyer called. Dad's will. Complications. Come alone. Please. Alone. The word stung, Mark's erasure deliberate. He saw my face in the car. Go. But not without me knowing everything. The drive to Idaho loomed again, but this time, I chose hybrid, flying solo, but with Mark's ring on a chain around my neck, his sketch of us tucked in my wallet. The farmhouse felt haunted, dust motes dancing in sunbeams like lost souls. Mom sat ramrod at the kitchen table, while papers splayed like an autopsy report. Everything to you and Lena, she said flatly. But the land. Condition. Repent, Anthony. Publicly. Deny this. Lifestyle. Then it's yours. Blackmail. The farm Dad loved, the soil that fed us, dangled like bait. Rage boiled, hot and righteous. You'd sell his legacy to buy my soul? That's not faith, Mom. That's control. Her eyes welled, first tears I'd seen. I lost him. Can't lose you too. You lost me years ago. I stood, papers untouched. Keep the land. I'll build my own. Outside, Lena waited in her truck. Knew she'd pull this. Dad left a letter, for you. Sealed envelope, his scrawl. Anthony, be the man I couldn't. Love fierce. No regrets. Dad. Tears blurred the ink. No conditions, just grace. I drove back to the airport, wind through open window, feeling unburdened for the first time. Mark met me at baggage, arms open. How'd it go? Freed. I handed him the letter. We're buying that cabin. Peninsula. Daisies and all. His grin lit the terminal. Sin and all. Especially that. Months blurred into a rhythm of reconstruction. Packing boxes in our apartment. The echo of laughter masking the ache of goodbyes to the city that had birthed us. Seattle had been our crucible, forging love from loneliness, but the cabin on the Olympic Peninsula called like a siren's song, promising space to breathe, to build without Bellevue's prying eyes or Idaho's long shadows. Mark dove into designs for the place, a tiny A-frame we'd snagged for a steal, perched on a bluff overlooking the Strait of Juan de Fuca, with windows framing whales breaching in summer mist. I quit the school job before they could fire me. The principal's mutual parting, email a polite pink slip, and lined up interviews at a progressive charter in Port Angeles, where the principal, a non-binary vet with tattoos, shook my hand and said, "We hire hearts, not headlines." But freedom's price was isolation's bite. The move unearthed ghosts, Daniel's restraining order hearing, a terse courtroom affair where he glared daggers, his lawyers spinning yarns of obsession until the judge shut it down, citing fabricated claims. Vindication, but the scar lingered, trust fractured, nights when I'd jolt awake, convinced every shadow was accusation. Mark bore it with me, his freelance steadying as he landed a gig illustrating a queer memoir, pages filled with couples like us, resilient and raw. Art therapy, he'd quip, charcoal smudging his fingers as we pored over proofs by candlelight, the fairy horn moaning distant approval. Fall painted the peninsula in fire, maples blazing against evergreens, the air crisp with salt and pine. We closed on the cabin mid-October, driving the U-Haul over Hood Canal Bridge, radio blasting Springsteen, Dad's favorite, a secret nod to the man who'd whispered no regrets. The place was a charmer, sagging porch we'd shore up, stone fireplace begging for stories, a loft bedroom with skylights for stargazing. Unpacking was ritual, Mark hanging his sketches, me shelving books, our hands brushing in the chaos like sparks. That first night, we christened it with takeout salmon from the local co-op, sprawled on a quilt before the unlit hearth. To new sins, Mark toasted with a mason jar of local cider, eyes dancing. To unapologetic ones, I clinked, the tang sharp on my tongue. But as embers of conversation died, doubt crept. Mom texted, "Thinking of you. No apology, just that." He set his jar down, expression softening. Reply, or don't. But don't let it rent space in your head. Easy for him to say, his family a closed book, pages torn out long ago. Mine lingered, a half-healed wound. Lena mediated, her updates a lifeline. Mom attending PFLAG meetings in Boise, tentative steps toward understanding, sparked by Dad's letter she'd found tucked in his Bible. "She's trying," Lena emailed. "Give her time." Time. The luxury I denied myself. Winter clamped down early, storms rattling the shutters, power flickering like our resolve. I started at the charter, kindergarten through fifth, a rainbow of kids from Fisher families and transplants, their questions guileless. Mr. Harlow, why's your ring on a chain? I'd smile, for someone special. Like how you love your dog. Mark thrived too, his illustrations going viral in lit circles, invites to readings in Seattle we navigated together, hands linked against the old stairs. But cracks spiderwebbed. Christmas loomed, first without Dad, and Mom's invite arrived. Handwritten, fragile. Home for the holiday? Lena's coming. Room for one more. One more. Mark, unspoken but implied. Temptation warred with wariness. The farm's pull magnetic, memories woven into every fence post. We debated over mulled wine by the fire, snow dusting the bluff. Go, Mark urged, surprising me. Show her your hole. I'll hold the fort, sketch some elves or something. Alone. The word tasted bitter. Not alone. With Dad's ghost in your pocket. He kissed my knuckles. Prove to yourself it's safe. So I flew east, nerves jangling like loose change. The airport reunion was stiff, Mom's hug bony, her eyes searching mine for cracks. Lena enveloped me, whispering, she's reading that book you sent. The one about gay dads. The farmhouse hummed with forced festivity, trees strung with mismatched ornaments, Lena's twins shrieking over gingerbread. Dinner was roast goose, Dad's recipe, the table set for ghosts. Conversations skirted edges, weather, grandkids, until coffee, when Mom cleared her throat. Anthony, I prayed. A lot. And I see now. The sin wasn't you. It was my fear. Tears pricked. Fear of what? Losing control. Of losing you. Her hand trembled across the table, tentative bridge. Forgive an old fool. I took it, skin paper thin. Working on it. Mark called at bedtime, voice a bomb. How's the prodigal? Human. I laughed softly. Miss you. Miss you more. Tell her hi from the devil's consort. Christmas morning dawned white, the twins dragging me sledding down the back 40, Lena snapping photos. Mom watched from the porch, bundled, a small smile cracking her facade. No grand gestures, just presence, thawing slow as spring. Back on the peninsula, Mark greeted me with cocoa and a wrapped sketch. Us on the porch swing, aged graceful, dog at our feet. Future-proof, he said. Spring brought bloom, my class thriving, Mark's book deal signed with fanfare. But summer tested, Daniel's shadow resurfaced, an anonymous blog post dredging the assault, twisted into tabloid fodder. Local teacher's dark secret, the headline screamed, photo of me from the school yearbook, innocent grin now suspect. Panic surged, calls from reporters, parents pulling kids. The charter stood firm, statements of support, HR counseling, but the toll mounted. Nights, I'd pace the bluff, waves crashing fury below, Mark trailing with tea. It's noise, he'd insist. We're signal. One evening, storm brewing, he dropped to one knee on the porch, not proposal, but plea. Marry me, Anthony. Not for show. For us. Anchor in the shitstorm. Tears mixed with rain. Yes. God, yes. The wedding was peninsula simple. Beach at dusk, Lena officiating. Mom in the front row, clutching Dad's Bible like talisman, her nod to Mark's solemn but sincere. Vows exchanged with salt spray, rings simple gold. In storms and sins, I promised. Honeymoon was the cabin, lazy days reading, nights tangled in sheets. But bliss fractured when Lena called. Mom's cancer diagnosis, stage 3, aggressive. Return to Idaho was déjà vu. Me driving this time. Mark beside. Cake box swapped for care packages. The farmhouse loomed, but lighter. Mom's embrace warmer, her hand finding Mark's. Welcome, she whispered. We rallied. Chemo runs, laughter over bad hospital jello. In quiet moments, she'd shared Dad's stories, unfiltered, his own hidden doubts about faith, love for me fierce and unspoken. He was proud, she confessed. Always. Mom faded summer's end, but went gentle, surrounded by us. Lena's kids drawing rainbows. Mark reading psalms with a twist, me holding her hand. No regrets, she echoed Dad, eyes on mine. Grief shared is halved. Back home, we planted a garden, Daisies for Mark, fudge roses for me. Roots deep in reclaimed soil. Love's not linear. It's the drive through rain. Cake intact. Family redefined. We're still sinners, but holy ones, grace our own. Autumn winds whispered change as we scattered Mom's ashes on the farm's back hill. The one overlooking the snake where Dad taught me to skip stones. Each plink a skipped heartbeat in the life we'd stitched from remnants. Lena and I stood shoulder to shoulder, Mark a step behind, his hand light on my back. Permission to lean, not obligation. The urn was simple pottery, her choice, etched with a single word, grace. No sermons, no judgments, just soil and sky. The circle closing on a woman who'd clawed from bigotry to benediction, her final months a testament to late-blooming courage. Back in the cabin, unpacking emotions heavier than luggage, I found the letter she'd left, tucked in a quilt square, needlework her therapy. Anthony, Mark, you drove through my storms. Drive on. Love, as fierce as the rain. Mom. Tears soaked the fabric. Mark reading over my shoulder, his arms circling my waist. She got there, he murmured. We all did. Did we? The question lingered through winter's hush. Holidays now ours to redefine. No Idaho treks, but Lena's video calls with the twins building snow forts. Mom's recipes adapted. Goose swapped for seitan roast, pride ornaments on our tree. My teaching bloomed at the charter. Kids' essays on family heroes, naming Mark alongside dads and aunts. Drawings of two grooms under rainbows. His book launched to acclaim. Tour stops in Portland and San Francisco, where we held hands in crowds. Unremarkable and revolutionary. Yet scars itched. Spring unearthed Daniel's final jab, a civil suit for defamation, claiming my blog post on resilience, anonymous, but he sniffed it out. Ruined his job prospects. Court was a circus, his lawyer painting me as vengeful ex, mine dismantling with emails, witnesses from the bar that night. Mark testified, voice steady. Anthony's light, not shadow. Daniel's the one chasing ghosts. Verdict, dismissed, with cost to him. Catharsis, but exhaustion. Nightside wake gasping, convinced the world's judgment was a tide pulling us under. Mark anchored, always. Therapy sessions in Port Angeles, his sketches evolving to abstracts of storms breaking, colors shifting from bruise blue to dawn gold. Art's my exorcism, he'd say, but I saw the toll. Gigs drying when clients balked at political work, isolation creeping as peninsula winters isolated. Summer tested bonds. Lena announced her divorce. Husband's affair, irony bitter, crashing to stay with us, twins in tow. The cabin strained. Noise where quiet reigned. Questions from 4-year-olds piercing as pins. Why don't you and Uncle Mark have babies? Ellie asked over breakfast, syrup sticky fingers on my knee. Mark fielded, gentle. We make family different ways. Like choosing ice cream flavors, endless options. But Lena's unraveling mirrored mine once. Rage at betrayal, faith in love frayed. Nights by the fire, wine loosening tongues, she confessed. I judged you, Tony, for leaving, for choosing him. But watching Mom, it showed me. Blood's not all. Forgiven long ago. I hugged her, Mark nodding from the armchair. He slipped out then, giving space, but later, on the bluff, I found him skipping stones, jaw set. Hard, huh? The family flood. He handed me a flat shale. Like herding cats in a hurricane. Skip, 2 bounces. You okay? You've been quiet. He sighed, wind tousling his hair. Miss the city buzz sometimes. The anonymity. Here, every wave's a reminder, we're exposed. Exposed. The word hung, evoking Mom's slap, Dad's wheeze, Daniel's sneer. We can move, I offered. Seattle again. Or Portland, bigger queer scene. His stones sank immediate. No, this is home because of you. Just. Processing. Processing. The therapy word for I'm scared. Fights followed, small at first, barbs over dishes, escalating to silences thick as fog. One night, storm raging, he shouted, you still run to them. In your head. Every call from Lena, you're half gone. And you build walls. I fired back, rain lashing windows. Sketches instead of words, pushing till I chase. Thunder clapped, truth electric. We collapsed on the rug, spent, apologies whispered in the afterglow. I need you all in, he said, forehead to mine. No half-loves. All in. Promise sealed with salt kiss. Fall brought harvest. Lena rebounding. Job at a Boise co-op. Visits now joy not obligation. Mark's exhibit in Seattle. Storms we survived. Canvases of us abstracted. Selling out to collectors who wept at artists' talk. It's not about the rain, he said, my hand in his under spotlights. It's the drive-through. Climax crested unexpected. A letter from Uncle Ray, postmarked Boise. Nephew, saw the wedding pics. Took guts. Dad'd be proud. Coffee sometime. Ray, the slur slinger, reaching tentative. We met in neutral Spokane. Diner booths smelling of fries and forgiveness. His apology was gruff, was wrong. Lost a brother young. Fear made me mean. Mark listened, adding, fear's a hell of a drug. Glad you're kicking. Bridges rebuilt, fragile but standing. Winter solstice, we renewed vows on the beach. Most romantic dusk, sun dipping blood orange, waves a hush. No cake, just cider toasts, Lena filming, stars emerging like witnesses. To 12-hour drives, I said, ring glinting. And cakes that survive. Mark's smile, eternal. Years folded, twins calling us uncles. A rescue dog named Whiskey bounding chaos. My novel on queer farm boys querying agents. Mark's studio expanded, murals for the school. Conflicts came, health scares, job losses, but we drove through. Rain gear on, love the engine. At 50, gray threading our hair, we sit porch swings creaking, sunset gilding the straight. Sin, Mark teases, hand in mine. Nah, sacrament. And in that, the story ends. Not tragic, but whole. Human, American as apple pie with a twist, fierce, flawed, forever driving.